we back. We back getting it, man.
Deserve.
We back. We back here, man. So hopping on episode 2. No pressure, no diamonds. Super excited about it. What a great today's gonna be a great experience. It's really just talking about how we make decisions. How myself and Thomas, like how we decided to make decisions when it came to getting involved in deciding to go into business, right? And some of you guys might have some of those same experiences or a degree of that experience, and so we're gonna have a really good talk today. So I'm super excited about it. So please just don't forget, like, subscribe, share, turn on some post notifications. We appreciate, we're a small channel so far, you know what I mean?
For now.
For now. But God willing, man, this thing will continue to grow, and we just appreciate the support of you guys and everybody that's going out and supporting and listening, and hopefully if we do talk about things that you can possibly implement them. And we're open to suggestions as well. So if you guys see any, you guys have any ideas, some things that you guys want to hear us talk about, we look forward to, or ideas of, some guests or some people that you'd like to have us talk to. We appreciate that as well. But man, let's just dive into it, man. You ready to dive in?
I think so, man. I've been thinking about this, and I kind of struggled with kind of determining what my thought process is when it comes to making decisions. But I think it's going to be a great conversation, and I'm excited to see what what flows out. So yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it. Let me ask you, though. Brother. I mean, we were talking about this for the last few days, and we were kind of touched on how we ended up in business and taking that entrepreneurship journey. So how exactly did that come to be for you?
Man, this is a story. Hopefully, I don't get too crazy long-winded, but it was almost in my blood, or felt that way a little bit, because first things first. So my mom is always, and it started with my parents. So my mom is, always had a career, right? So she always had like some type of career. I know she worked at the base for like almost Edwards Air Force Base for like 30 years, in various roles there, and that was her job, right? But she always said, my job pays the bills and my business creates our lifestyle. And she always said that, right? She always said that, which always kind of stuck into my head. I was like, okay, all right, seems pretty interesting, because she's had, her and my dad have always had businesses before, like, so whether it's real estate, right? I think everybody at one point was in real estate at one point or another, at least in California, right? Whether it's real estate business, or whether it's mortgage, or whether it's so they always said, or it was what was I gonna say, like a network marketing company or something of that nature. They always had side hustles, right? And that was always very interesting to me, especially growing up and seeing that they would literally get off of work and be right back at it. But I always noticed that they had a lot more fun doing their business than necessarily, going to work every day. My mom always said, oh, well, I love my job. She would say that all the time. But I'd never seen her joyous getting off of work. But I always seen her joyous when she was doing business, even when it wasn't great, when it wasn't even great times.
Right.
You know what I mean? She was joyous. She was like always focused on doing something. So that's where really, that's where the seed was planted for me early on, was seeing my parents have businesses for themselves and be excited about, just goals and dreams. They never talked about goals and dreams with their jobs, right? But they always talked about goals and dreams as it pertained to business. Now for myself, now springing forward, some years, man, I personally decided to go into business when I was frustrated. I was working, I'd go to school, get good grades, get a good job, right? My mom always talked about going to school, getting good grades, get a good job. But when it came to, hitting a ceiling, I started hitting ceilings at work, you know. And my first ever job got the rug pulled from under me. So, so I worked for a company where they closed the job down and didn't tell anybody about it.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? The first like real job I had, they closed the doors, didn't tell anybody about it. Boom, rug pulled from under us. And that was it. And I'm talking about people that was out there working for like 15, 20 years at this job, and they thought they was in there. And they literally opened up, oh man, got pushed out. So that was my first real experience of me not being in control. Second experience of me not being in control was, when you would hit promotions and work for a company, great company, in the telecom industry, but you work and you focus on getting promoted and you can't get promoted unless somebody else allows you to. And that was my second experience of hitting a ceiling. So at that point, that's when I really decided on focusing in on, I got to find a way. I got to find a way for myself. And my mom always stayed in my ear. She always did this. She always stayed in my ear. And, she invited me to like a business seminar, introduced me to some people. But the first time I seen everything, I was definitely not interested. Because I thought it was like one of those things, man. I thought it was weird. I was like, oh, this is crazy, but I was dissatisfied. I was still dissatisfied. Man. So I was like, okay, I could be, so in my front of my mind, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, you know what I mean? But, but I wasn't necessarily interested at the beginning, right? So I wasn't necessarily interested at the beginning. And then I went through more dissatisfaction at my job, even more dissatisfaction, like doing great work at work and still not being able to move forward. So my dissatisfaction level was probably at 11 out of 10. And then my mom was like, hey, I'm telling you, if you want to start taking control of your life, you got to start doing some things to control your life. And she was like, look, take another look. And I was like, okay, I did. And I was like, you know what? If I don't decide to do something different, my life's gonna stay the same.
Let me ask you something, dude. And I hate to interrupt you, but I think that there's a critical point to be made here. Your mom showed you this opportunity, not once, but twice. Yeah. And the first time, your mom showed you this opportunity. Somebody who I'm assuming you trust, you respect, you love, has your best interest in mind, and you still felt like this is one of those things. And it took a whole nother level of dissatisfaction and frustration in order for you to even double back and say, okay, I'll take a second look at it. And then at that point, when you looked at it with essentially a new set of eyes based off that frustration and stuff, what happened there?
Yo, man. So it was, man, with that, I wish I could tell these people's names, man. It'd be so much easier to put names in these stories. But so my dissatisfaction was very high, right? And it wasn't it wasn't like a financial dissatisfaction. It was a controlled dissatisfaction because I felt like I had my life in my hands, right? So I felt like, man, I'm doing good. I can move forward, but I actually couldn't because somebody else had to give me the keys to move forward. And that was brutal. I mean, that right there, I don't know if it was like a heart thing. It was one of those pits in the stomach thing, knowing that I had to, I don't want to say like it, so in job communities, a lot of nepotism, a lot of this person likes this person, type of things would happen. But at that point, that's when I was like, you know what? I can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. I can't keep, that's insanity. That's literally the definition of insanity. So guess what? I got to start changing what I'm doing. And that's when I really seriously, and this was like seriously, started taking some real strides in going into business. And I let the reins go and I allowed myself to be coached and mentored. And that was probably another big leap for myself was allowing other people to coach and mentor me and take me by the reins and be like, hey, you know what? Surrendering to a process, because I'd never been an entrepreneur before that. I never had to, make my own way before that. So, that took a lot of mental switching out of me. I had a lot of employee in me still at that point. Even going into business, I was still an employee, mentally.
Right. Okay.
I was still an employee mentally, and I had to really, and to be honest, man, it took years to get that out of me. It literally took years to get that employee mindset out of me, man. So that was my decision process, and it wasn't we'll get into a little bit later about like how decisions are made and stuff. But my process was really it took a lot, even though it was my mom. And some people are like, man, my sister doesn't listen to me. My cousins, my mom isn't listening to me. Man, my mom was telling me about doing business. I've seen it a lot. And I even had seeds planted in my head of years of experience. But still, it took multiple times of, and a lot of pressure of dissatisfaction, to push me, not to necessarily push me, but for me to really make that decision to be like, you know what, I need to start changing things up for myself.
Right.
So that was interesting, man. Totally interesting
control,
experience.
right? But like figuring out how to get control back in your hands, like you mentioned. You said something at the beginning too, bro, that like has me thinking about kind of my story and the journey to entrepreneurship. But it was a little opposite. So I love that you started with the example that you had around you. You had an example of parents that had a job that were, hardworking, and not quote unquote, they're actually hardworking people. I know them personally, and they're great examples. But you said, my mom would say, I love my job, but you never seen her joyous. You didn't see her joyous until she was pursuing something that was outside of the job that probably gave her a sense of hope, a bigger vision. You said goals and dreams and stuff like that, right? And so I was curious. I'm like, man, I wonder how much of that, and knowing your mom, she's just a beautiful soul and spirit. She probably really, truly did love some aspect of the job. But I wonder how many people actually say that same quote, I love my job, or I enjoy it, or whatever. And it's not 100% honest. I think sometimes I wonder how much of it is like trying to convince themselves, right? Because like our brain can be programmed for the most part, but our heart can be disconnected from that. And so you had this example of somebody that was outside of work chasing entrepreneurship and control of time and big vision and big goals and big dreams, but at the same time still telling you to find a good job, right? And I think there's something important for people to know that are on this journey, is that a lot of times, if not 100% of the time, when you have family that loves you, especially like your parental unit, they're going to keep to tradition, quote unquote, meaning go out, get a good education and get a good job. I want you guys to understand that system's broken for the most part, right? It's so broken. And so let me tell you a little bit about my journey, bro. I had the exact opposite. I just had hardworking parents, and they never wanted, well, actually, I shouldn't say they never wanted. My father has always wanted to be a business person, an entrepreneur. He's always wanted that control. He's always wanted to be his own boss. I remember multiple times throughout my life, he said, man, if you can figure out a way to be your own boss, if you can figure out a way to be your own boss. And he had visions and ideas, and, he's pitched some of these ideas. And my mom just being, incredibly responsible and always caring about, the best interests of the family first and foremost, never supported that idea for fear of failure, right? Like, we can't afford for that not to work. And I understand that, and I respect that. And actually, a part of me appreciates that as a parent myself, right? You want the best for your children. But bro, there was always a come, right? And now, in entrepreneurship, no risk, no reward. We've all heard that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
dude, I started as an employee at like 15, 16 years old, right? One of my teachers would pick me up, and he had a landscaping business on the side, and he'd pick me up and I'd go cut grass and stuff with him. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that he had, like, I don't know, this business that he could run, and, and he would pay me and he'd feed me and all this stuff, dude. And it was pretty cool. And I always loved that idea, but I had the seed planted from my dad that if you could figure out a way to be your own boss, like, you'd be winning. So I loved that idea. But the seed that actually sprouted in my mind was get a job, it's consistent, right? Like that fear of failure from my mom's side. And I think you could utilize both. But here's what I did. I actually ended up in the restaurant industry for about 15 years. I thoroughly enjoyed about 12 of those years, bartending and meeting people and stuff like that. But my wife and I, we got pregnant, we bought a house, and we got married, kind of in that order, a little bit out of the norm, but that's what happened. And when I found out I was going to be a father, Alex, the responsibility bug hit me. And so I went the only natural route that I knew how to go. And in the restaurant business, that was go from like, employee to like running the place, manager. So I started climbing this corporate ladder. And I'll tell you what, man, I hated it. And like, nothing against climbing the corporate ladder, if that's your thing, or management, or whatever the case may be. I'm not trying to knock that, but for me, I hated it. I hated, like what you mentioned, the lack of control. I hated the fact that people had a thumb on me. I hated the fact that I was taking work home, that I was finishing schedules on my days off, that I was doing conference calls and mandatory meetings on my days off. I hated the fact that my bosses wanted, at the beginning of the year, January 1 of every year, they wanted my entire family's plans as far as agenda, vacation, days off, a year in advance. And I'm like, who plans that? Like, not only are you taking hours away from my family, but you're taking away all spontaneity, all fun, and this and that, right? And so I did that for about 3.5 years. And I'm a Christian, and he works and comes in the most unexpected of ways. But after about 3.5 years, Alex, of my wife and I playing basically an adult version of tag with a toddler, right? Like, tag, you're it. She'd get home from work, and then I'd go to work in the evening. So we never had quality time together. But hey, as parents, you do what you got to do, and you make that sacrifice for the better of your family. And so that got to be the norm. What was surprising is that our oldest son was noticing and realizing that. And at about 3.5 years old, he's standing in front of the garage door that I'm trying to run out to get to a job that I hate, but I was running a little late for, and I didn't want to get in trouble, And so I turned to run out the door, and I almost truck my boy, and he has the saddest look on his face. And he says, "Daddy, I never see you and mommy together." Now, bro, I don't know if you could imagine that, hearing that as a parent from your child, especially a 3.5-year-old, when all you're trying to do is provide a good life and ensure that they're happy, right? And what he wasn't seeing was the most critical thing for him, and that was a lack of relationship between his parents. And bro, I can't tell you what that drive to work looked like. I know that I cried. I'm getting a little worked up right now. I'm trying to hold it back. But I sat in the parking lot for about 10 minutes that day, and fighting with myself on whether or not I was going to turn my keys in, and that was going to be my last day. But I kept hearing my dad in my head, bro. He said, "You're a man, you have responsibilities, you can't quit, you can't quit." Like, that's what kept playing in my head. So long story long, I walked in, didn't quit. But that same exact day that my son told me, "Daddy, I never see you and mommy together," it was a day where all of the big bosses were at work. Now, they're in usually at different times throughout the year, but never all at the same time. And so my GM, general manager, was there, the area director was there, the area vice president, and the regional vice president. We're all there at the same time. And check this out, man, this is how good God is. I walk in the door and I see all four of these gentlemen directly in front of me. And all of them, it's like you could feel they were high strung. The energy was all negative. They're all kind of like, I don't know. It was a weird vibe. It was a weird feeling. They're all balding, which, I can blame them now, I guess, if you look at my dome, it was work. But they're all balding. A couple of them had been divorced, a couple of them more than one time, right? And honestly, man, what I had was a moment of clarity, Alex. I literally realized that if I stayed on that same track, that same road, I was looking at my future. Now, my son told me, Daddy, I never see you and Mommy together. And here I am looking at four guys that have no relationship with their spouse, unless it involves outside of it being built around work. And bro, I'll tell you, man, my frustration was at an all-time high. My reason kind of matched my frustration, which was, man, I got to save my marriage. I got to save my family. I got to be an example to my son, and I have to be present above all else. And so, needless to say, man, I took a step back. I actually ended up going back to bartending, and then I found a business opportunity. It presented itself, and it had presented itself on 3 different occasions prior to before I decided to do it. But I did it, man. And I made a sacrifice for a short-term sacrifice, right? So I did go back to bartending, and I'd be working until sometimes 3:30, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on how busy we were. I'd get home at like 4:30, 4:45. I'd take a shower, and then I'd fall asleep on the couch on purpose. And here's the reason why it was on the couch, was because I knew that if I went up to my bed, I would be too comfortable to wake up early enough to go down to the office and take care of business. And so I'd fall asleep on the couch on purpose, knowing my wife would come down and be like, shake the crap out of me and say, hey, get up, it's time to go to training, you know what I mean? And go to the office and go do what I got to do to build what we've been building now for the last 6 years. And so my journey into entrepreneurship was obviously a different path, but it really was that frustration. It was the want for control and those types of things. But it was really to keep the nucleus in my household together, man, and even get it tighter. And we've been able to do so. But
shoot, man, and you said something there that stuck out to me, man. Appreciate the openness, man, of that story, man. Like that was fire, man. And it's real. You know what I'm saying? You can't step around the truth. You know what I'm saying? You can't step around the truth, man. And one thing that I noticed that you said towards the end there was, business presented itself 3 times, you said to you. And when you said that, made me think like you have to be mentally ready for things to be seen fully, for me to take, just talking about myself now, send it back to you on this end. For myself, a business had to take it twice, right? I was a little frustrated at first, but I was insanely frustrated and totally open the second time, right? Same information, same everything,
right?
But I seen it two different types of ways. Like, I literally seen it 2 different types of ways. But the first time I wasn't mentally ready. So even if I decided to do something at that point, I probably would have crashed and burned, fairly quickly because I wasn't mentally ready, right, to take a hold of that opportunity. So tell me about like kind of the 3 times that, that a business kind of came into your realm and why it took those 3 times for you to see it that type of way.
Well, I think the reason why it took those 3 times, man, honestly, up front, was that initial seed of fear that I had in my mind. It was kind of complacency, and it was comfort. Here's the bottom line, man, that industry could be a tough industry, the restaurant, but it's not rocket science, man. And honestly, I was pretty good at it. I was pretty good with people. I was making a decent enough income. I just wasn't dissatisfied enough. So really all three times that it presented itself, I just kind of shrugged it off like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. And really what that was is that was being dishonest to myself, man, because I wasn't good deep down inside. I literally hated the job, dude. I was acting so much. I hated the job. But as soon as I walked in, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Dude, it was such a front, dude. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
And I think that's what stood out to me about your story when your mom was like, and again, she probably did love her job, but I know a lot of people that say that and they don't. And I feel like they're just trying to convince themselves. And that part, it stood out to me because I relate to it. Because I would go into work and be like, everything's hunky-dory, things are good, right? It's like when you walk down the street, people are like, hey, how you doing? You're like, good. Dude, and you're not good. You know what I mean? And so really that's all it was, is I was just being dishonest to myself. And those three times that it presented it, I lied. I lied to myself and I convinced myself that I was okay. But that frustration just hadn't hit the breaking point, really. But it was there. It just wasn't at, the peak that it needed to be at, I guess, so to speak.
Wow. That's man. I'm sure that hit a lot of y'all right across the head right there. Things, but we gotta be ready, right? And sometimes, and we see this all the time, especially in our field, right? Where we see people's situations, and we know their situation is screaming out, help me, help me, help me, help me. But the person is like, I'm good. Hey, we're okay. I think we're good. I think we'll be all right. Or they're literally in denial, of their situation. And a lot of it, like we were saying before, it's programming, really. It's really programming. And that little, that fear bug, that little bit of fear is so huge, in their, it's taking up all their vision to where they can't really see past it, into like, well, shoot, the real fear is I'm going to stay here and I'm going to be dissatisfied for the next however many years there, or an assortment of careers or jobs. I'm going to still be dissatisfied. And it might not be money sometimes, because mine wasn't necessarily an income deal. It was, I wasn't in control of my situation. So some people, when they make the money, but they don't have the control of the time, and it sounds like kind of similar with you as well. You're like, well, I was doing kind of good. Like I felt like the income wasn't really an issue. It was my lifestyle, and I couldn't do what I really wanted to do with my time, and I think that's a lot of folks out there, man, is their time, is, they're stealing time from their family is what it really comes down to. You're stealing time from yourself and from your family, and us figuring out a way, or being blessed enough for somebody to take that leap of faith and introduce us to something, because they could have been scared and they could have been fearful themselves.
Right.
But they took that leap of faith, like, you know what? I'm not going to be fearful today. Let me just offer it to them. And that literally forever changed our lives, man. Like, it changed my life totally. If it isn't just for how I think, and my focus on progression and moving forward, and not being just satisfied. Where I was so, man, I just see a lot of folks, man, just like, man, they're satisfied with, they like, man, like they're good, but they complain all the time. Man.
So like, bro, like how good are you? I feel so often, and I don't know why this keeps standing out to me, man, but I honestly feel that people just aren't honest, and they're just not real. And they take these actions and they use these words in hopes of convincing themselves, right? Like in hopes of convincing themselves that they're okay, or maybe, or honestly, maybe what it might be too, dude, is it might just be, man, they've thrown in the towel. It might just be that, like, hey, they've just kind of accepted that this is the way it is. And, you know, these are the cards I was dealt, and at least I'm playing my hand. And, and for me, I just kind of, I got to the point, again, bro, where I refused to accept that. You know, I just refused to accept that. I didn't want that to be the way that it was. And bro, honestly, I'm kind of a rebellious person. I grew up a rebellious kid. My wife's over here looking like I'm probably still rebellious even towards her. And she's not a parent, right? But she's my spouse and one of the most important people in my life. But man, I will go above and beyond to rebel. What I didn't like, dude, honestly, about having a job was having to ask permission. Like, here I am, a grown man in my 30s, and I'm asking permission to spend time with the people I'm working for, right? Like, how bizarre is that, dude? You know what I mean? And again, no knock. Like, if that's you, some people just like having a job and they don't mind. For a person like me, I hated it. I hated it. I hated having to do that, dude. Yeah, like I just didn't like it, man. And I don't want this to feel like I'm bashing employees. Like, they're important, right? Like, you know,
we need them.
Yeah, we need them, right? Like, we need them to run the coffee machine or whatever. Like,
yeah, man.
And no, not.
Mine was the word boss. The word boss, just like, you know, outside of just like the you know, like kind of just the slang aspect, like, hey boss, what's going on, man? You know, like we talking to somebody, yeah. But it's like, no, this person's my boss. Like, they have control of what happens to my life. You know, that was brutal to me.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy is it that, like, and I don't know if a lot of people have realized this, dude, but I heard somebody say it. One of our mentors in the business, Ed Milet, right, had mentioned I heard him say one time, he goes, look, having a job and having a boss, it actually controls more than you think, because essentially they control where you live, don't they? Right? Like, based on the income that they're willing, they control where you live. They control the type of schools your kids go to. They control the type of future your kids might have, whether they go to college or not, all based on a salary, right? Like, hey, you're going to trade hours of your life for $15 an hour or $22 an hour, whatever that number is, insert that number. And for me, I just came to a realization where I felt like my time was more valuable than what they could ever pay me, right? Than what they could ever pay me. And so, you know, it's crazy, dude. Like, I heard an acronym one time, Alex, and it's POOR. And I know you've heard of this too, right? It spells out poor, right? But what does the acronym mean? It says passing on opportunities regularly or routinely, one of those two. Passing on opportunities regularly. And when I hear that, I don't think monetarily. I don't think like, oh, they're poor, they're living on the street, they're eating like ramen noodles every night. Like, I think mindset. Like, how many people just have this poor, broke down kind of, I've settled mindset, right? Like I said, they just kind of figured this is the card that I was dealt, or the cards I was dealt, and their mindset is poor and broke, or broken, however you want to look at that. And they just continue to pass on opportunities. They've literally thrown in the towel on their belief. And we just brought on a lady who's 67 years old, dude. And she was like, I'm taking this thing and I'm running with it. She doesn't need to work, but she just wants this. She wants something more, right? So she still has this burning desire and this fight in there, and it's not too late. And I'll tell you what, dude, she's probably going to hit 7 figures in the next, what would you say? Maybe like 3 to 4 years probably is what I'm guessing. Like, she's so hungry, so driven, and she's built up to this moment. It was one of the things exactly that she said. So, man, I know we went off on a tangent. I know we wanted to talk about like the decision-making process, but I think all of this kind of ties into it.
It does. You know what? It absolutely does, man. And what you just hit on made me think of another thing, you know, especially that Milet says, man, people's will to win is for sale.
Fire.
Right?
Yep.
Their will to win's for sale. That's what it really comes down to, because, you know, the job puts a price tag on your will to win and go out and get after it, right? You know, you take a tiger, you know, that's been in captivity or been at the zoo that's always been getting kind of spoon fed its meals every day, right? And you take it and put it out into the wild, it's not going to know how to eat. It's not going to know out there and get it and win, right? Because their will to win has been, it was born, it was, it could have came from captivity where it had to fight and eat for food. You had to fight and, basically fight to live every day, fighting for every meal, right? To where they get into the zoo or they get captured, whatever, get put into the zoo, right? And now every day they don't have to fight for their food. So guess what? That muscle of fighting for food, it diminishes and diminishes and diminishes and diminishes and diminishes. And after a while, it forgets to fight for food. Insert your analogies here, like the elephant that grew up with a little stick in the mud and, grew up when it was a baby, it couldn't get itself loose, right? It was tied to a rope into a small little stick, maybe this big when it was a baby elephant. It grows up, it's a 20-ton elephant or whatever elephants weigh.
Yeah, it's unstoppable, right? Essentially.
And it's tied to still this little stick, right? And the elephant thinks, I can't move because I'm tied to the stick, so I can't go anywhere until I'm untied from the stick. But that's what's happened to a lot of people. That's what happened to me for years. My will to win was for sale until my dissatisfaction with my situation caused me to, really think about going outside of my box. It wasn't necessarily outside of the box, but it's outside of the box that was placed around me, due to a lot of just situational things. And being comfortable, it's like, what, man, I have this, but what happens if I fail? That's what most people think. That's what I thought, man, what's going to happen if I fail? But what's happened if I, instead of thinking about what's going to happen if you fail, what's going to happen if you win? What's going to happen when you don't give up? What's going to happen when you actually decide to go after? What's going to happen when, you bet on you for once? Bet on you for once, right? You're either going to win or you're going to learn something about yourself, man. You're going to bet on you. That's, let's take it into that aspect, when it comes to that. So deciding to win, all right, so making that decision now and deciding to go into business, what are some things that people can do to help them with really just taking that leap of faith? Man, like, what are some things that you would just think of, to help with people, taking that leap of faith and betting on themselves?
That's an interesting question. What can they decide to do? I think first that level of frustration, I think, is a must. Because if you don't hate something enough, you're just going to accept it, right? If you don't have a want to change, you're going to accept it and you'll stay complacent and stuff like that. So I think, honestly, dude, what I had to do was I had to take an honest look in the mirror and just have an honest conversation with myself. It was, do you not where you are supposed to be? You're not living up to your full capabilities. So I think one is, if you are dissatisfied, then accept the fact that you're dissatisfied and then go out and try some stuff. Like, make a decision that you're going to do something different. You mentioned that earlier, right? Like, you can't do the same thing and expect different results. And dude, I know people that like their job, that truly enjoy their job, doctors and nurses and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But they know that's only going to take them so far. So you may love your job, but if it's not going to get you to those goals, those dreams, that vision that you have, if it's not going to, if it doesn't break that chain that you're trying to break as far as legacy and generations to come in your future and the lineage, if it doesn't do that, then add something to that and make a decision that you're going to commit some time to accomplishing those goals and that vision and stuff like that. But what I would say is, make that decision. If you are dissatisfied with your situation, understand that that's okay. And it's actually the fuel that you might need to go out and start and put your head down and charge. And even if you're not, there's something probably that that you want to get that your current situation is not going to allow you to get as much as you love it, right? Like, I know teachers that love being teachers 9 months out of the year, but 3 months they're freaking scared and living like really small because there's no income coming in, right? Like, and stuff like that. So decision making is important. Knowing what you want is important. But then I think acceptance of the truth, if you are dissatisfied, like accept that, be honest with yourself, and then make a decision to go out and find something that may help you. And then accept fear too, man. Fear is okay. It could be a great weapon, right? Like Rocky called it Frankie fear in one of the movies. But dude, here's my take on fear: is fear is just faith in the wrong what if. And I think we get so paralyzed by the what if, insert pessimism, right? Versus saying, man, it's okay to be fearful, but the second you push past that fear, like you push past it, man, that becomes a win and a victory, and you just got some wind beneath your wings. And so to utilize that and chalk it up, like it could be every time you push past that fear, it's like you just gave yourself a trophy. You know what I mean?
Man.
And man, you start loading up your shelves with some trophies, and I think you're on track to changing your life for the better. I think realizing that, we all have a pen in our hand and a blank page in front of us every single day. And we get to decide what we're going to write on those pages. And the story's not over. And I think a lot of people have just decided that the story's been done and they're just, just turning the pages, man, but not realizing they can write that. I don't know if that answered the question, but I take on it. It's very simple. Make a decision and know what you want, and be honest with yourself. If what you want you can't get in your current situation, then you better do something different. Otherwise, don't complain, like you mentioned.
Man, amazing. Fire. And if he hit you, he didn't mean to miss you, man, and fear, man, big deal. So huge. I think that's the first thing that stops anybody from doing anything is fear. But your first step past fear, once you take that first step past fear, you have now entered into the courage realm, right? You're now entered into courage mode. Once you take that first step past fear and not giving into it. And, that's huge. And I would think of one more thing to add to that is when it comes to making decisions, especially about improving yourself, improving your situation, what's your level, and I want the people to think about this. What's your level of exposure right now to things outside of what it is that you're currently doing? If it's just for work, if it is a current business that you're doing that maybe not succeeding or whatever, if it's something along those lines, then what is your exposure to things outside of that realm, right? Who do you only hang out with? People that are nurses? Do you only hang out with people that have jobs? Or do you know any people that have successful businesses? Do you know anybody that has success? And if you don't, there's a lot of books out there that you can go out, you can literally buy 20, 30 years of experience for like $10, right? for a little bit at all, you can literally buy years of experience. And all I do is kind of consume books and knowledge and those things. But I just challenge people to go out there and seek seek mentorship, around them, seek, if there are people that you know of that have, that may possibly live may have great family relationships that around you, right? So if you want to increase your family relationship, maybe with your spouse or with your children, then seek out somebody that has that you see that has a great relationship with their spouse and with their kids. Seek out those people and ask, what the heck are you doing? Ask them. People love giving knowledge, by the way, right? If you see somebody that has a successful business, right, and you may work a job, then seek out knowledge from that person and literally just ask. A lot of things I've had to go through a lot of headaches in my life because I wasn't willing to ask. In the moment I built up the courage and moved past fear just to ask the question, people are like, well, yeah, of course I'd be willing to help. A lot of people are willing to help you, right? And I would focus on, people that are around you, maybe in your sphere or close to you, or, maybe a couple of relationships away, maybe a friend of a friend. Maybe ask a friend, hey, who do you know that's this, and this? Insert what you want out of your life there, and if your friend may know somebody like that, well, guess what? Seek out that relationship and that mentorship, right? Some of the mentors that we have, we're exposing them here on the podcast, like Ed Milet and the Greg Capps and the Jamie Villalobos and the thousands of people, right? Thousands of mentorships that we get, we get a lot of, along with a lot of other people, right? That are mentors to us. Seek out those relationships. And if you have people that are willing to mentor you and willing to help you and give you information and advice, and you're not taking it and you're not doing anything with it, then I challenge you to grow, challenge you to start taking that advice and utilizing it. Especially somebody's mentoring you for free and giving you great advice and information for free. Utilize it,
You know what, bro? I'm going to be completely transparent with whoever's tuning in and whoever's still with us at this point. I want to be honest. Like, please know that whatever I'm saying I'm not speaking at you. I'm actually speaking for myself, because these are things that even now I will still struggle with.
Facts.
You know what I mean?
Twice for me.
Bro, we're on a journey. We're nowhere near where we want to be. What we're trying to do is, share what we've come across, because we do have world-class mentorship. But man, I'm guilty of not acting at the speed of instruction. I'm guilty of hesitation and procrastination. And 90%, 99% of what I just said, I needed to hear myself say it, because I just punched myself, you know what I mean, in with it, and so we're not perfect here, guys. And,
works in progress, man.
Yeah, 100%. But the difference is, if you haven't started that journey and you've been thinking about it forever, the difference is that we have started it, and hopefully we can add some value in that process, man. But yeah. I had to throw out that disclaimer.
Hey, that's a fact. Hey, thank you for that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I don't want people to think that, we're talking at them. We're hoping to just add some value and maybe give you a little bit of courage that you might need.
Hey, just a little
knowing
juice.
That you can do it.
Just a little bit of juice, man. And, and I think this can actually be, I think, a part 1 and part 2, I feel like. With this one, man, when it comes to making decisions. So I'm thinking on the next one, episode 2.5. We'll have part 2 to this one when it comes to making decisions, and then we'll trickle some other things in there as well. But here, decision making and being quick to make decisions and slow to change them. That's something I've struggled with all the time. Because I'm such I bounce from lily pad to lily pad mentally, because my mind tends to go from, man, this is cool, this is great. But I get bored really quick. I get I have to stay, excited, and it has to be fun for me to continue to keep doing it. Right. That's going to be a good one, man. Like, how do you continue when the process isn't always fun? How do you continue to do it? That'll be one for the books. That'll be a good one. How do we continue when the process stops being fun? You have to find ways to make it fun, for me anyway. But yeah, man, so I think for the next one, man, we'll continue with this, and trickle some other things in there, man. But this was fire, man.
I enjoyed it, man. And this was more for me, I think, than it was for anybody else. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. Decisions, man. Decisions, man. So we appreciate you guys hopping on today. And remember, please subscribe, comment, let us know, give us some opportunities. Let us know of some opportunities of improvement as well, right? So give us suggestions, man. We really appreciate it. And just remember, pressure, no diamonds. Peace, you guys.